was a throw. That was expensive.
Oh, he didn't even cut you a deal? Have a big turnout tonight. It was kind of, so what do we got here? We got 9 participants, 9 of us here. Welcome everybody to the West Side Computer Club. Our typical format will be, we'll have our open forum, then we'll all break for pizza. No pizza. Then we will have our presentation by Tom O'Connor. So we're going to start out with our open forum, and I'm sure this is going to be quick. Who's got any outstanding questions they'd like to ask to our May edition of the Westside Computer Club? Like I said, this might be quick. I got a question. On one of my PCs, I keep getting that annoying Microsoft blue box. Oh, good. Oh, Dennis is coming in. I'll wait for Dennis. I can go ahead and say that. I get the annoying Microsoft blue box that pops up that says that they want to finish configuring my Microsoft account, and I can either postpone it for 3 days or continue. And if you go through the continue, they're insistent that you give them your phone number, which I don't want to tie my phone into this thing. So I always delay this. How do I get rid of this crap?
I've published articles on it.
How do I get rid of this crap?
That's what I'm saying. There's articles I've published on the damn thing to get rid of it.
That didn't answer the question.
Yes, it
How
does.
do I get rid of crap? I mean, I guess the answer is okay. Go and do my own research on it and look it up, right?
It's in my more FYIs.
Okay, so there's the answer. Anything else we want to do tonight?
No.
Nobody else knows how to get around this thing? Does everybody know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
It's asking you to complete the setup of OneDrive?
It wants to do my Microsoft account. I think it's the Microsoft account where they want you to set up OneDrive and Internet Explorer options and make it your default browser.
First of all, Home or Pro?
It actually appears
I don't have
on
the
both.
answer because I don't have the answer on that particular machine. I'd have to go and take a look at it.
I think it's on both of them.
It depends on how it was installed in Pro. In Home, it will try to do this.
Okay, let's say it's a Home.
Yeah. And like I say, it's a little on the complicated side. Tim has published several articles about it and referenced various places online where they go through the whole procedure. It's a multi-step procedure. And it starts with how Windows is installed in Windows 10 or 11, especially 11. Because Windows 11 Home, I'm not even sure you can avoid setting up a Microsoft account.
This is in Windows 10.
All right, there you should, when it was installed, you should have chosen a local account. But it's not too late to convert to a local account.
So it's because it's not a local account, it's going to keep pestering me this?
It's been set up as a Microsoft account.
All right. Well, what if I don't want Microsoft to have my phone number information? That's really the part that hangs me up here. I get through the whole...
Yeah, go ahead. What else?
I get through if you go through the screens, at some point it says, we want your phone number. And I don't want to give them my phone number. And there's no back button, there's no skip, there's no cancel, nothing.
With all my machines, I've never given them a number. I managed to get through the whole 9 yards, and it leaves me alone after that.
Okay, I'll try it again.
This goes back to how it was installed. Now, if you are you able to get to the desktop and do stuff from the desktop
Yes.
of an account? Okay. Ignore what it's trying to tell you. Go
Right.
into your settings, and it'll take you back to the old style control panel and change the account type from Microsoft account to local account. There's a way to do that.
Okay.
From especially if it's an administrator account. From an administrator account, you can change any account from a Microsoft account to a local account. And then it won't be bugging you about any of this cloud stuff.
Okay.
And give me a minute or two, I can probably find a reference for how you do that, although it's probably something Tim already dug up.
Actually, I haven't bothered playing with the articles I published because I managed to dispatch that every time, and that with only a couple minutes of aggravation, and it's gone.
I'll go through some aggravation and I'll dispatch it.
Okay, settings, accounts, your info. Select sign in, it's sign in type. Select sign in with a local account instead. And then you just type in the username, the password, and the password hint, just as you always have.
Recording in progress.
And so now you start recording. Now I have to repeat it.
It's okay.
But yeah, it's a pretty simple process actually. You're going to change the sign in type, not the account type, but the sign in type. So instead of logging in with your Microsoft account, you will now log in with a local password.
So what's the difference between signing in on a Microsoft account versus a local account?
Microsoft gets to look at everything you're doing when you sign in as a Microsoft account, and they get to bug you with all these nags, and they get to set OneDrive as your default save location and all kinds of other stuff. There is telemetry no matter what, but this is beyond that.
Okay.
And I would also highly recommend, if you want to set up a local account, that you use O&O Shutup 10 to set all the privacy settings the way you probably want them. Use their defaults.
O-M-O.
O&O, O ampersand O, Shutup 10. Shut up 10. That is a program from a German company or a consortium that's based in either Germany or Austria. And they've been around ever since all this Windows 10 privacy stuff first broke as a complaint.
Yeah, it's been around a long time.
So O&O, apparently, even though we're not too clear as to exactly who they are, who runs the place, they seem to be reasonably trustworthy. Unlike some of the privacy utilities you could get online, which you may be throwing away more than you're taking back.
Mm-hmm.
So Shutup 10 is one of the better ones. There are other ways of controlling the privacy settings. There are other tweaking tools.
Right. Okay, thank you. I think we covered this.
Yeah,
Does
so
anyone else-
like I say, local account.
Okay.
Sign in type.
All right. Anyone else have questions for our open forum? Yes, Stan. You're muted, Stan. Ah, there you go.
I've got one that I probably should know how to do, but it escapes me as to how to do it. I have Gmail and I have like 15,000 emails, and I really don't want to go through them 100 at a time. Is there a way to take a block of them and remove them as a block by highlighting or something like that?
Have you tried to highlight them?
Yeah, but I can only go up to 100.
Oh, so you want to highlight more than 100?
Yeah, like about 12,000.
He wants
Like-
to do a
do
bulk
like all.
removal.
I
Like
didn't
do
hear
a-
that.
You want to do a select all or something.
Yeah,
I am not sure Gmail lets you do that. They claim that's for
They
your
do either.
protection. They claim it's for your protection, but it also has to do with paging in their server, how their servers page
yeah.
everything. You can only delete one page at a time.
And it's not exclusive to Gmail. That's
No.
in every email client I've got, and I've got quite a few of them. There is
Yeah.
no major block type delete where you keep some stuff and get rid of the rest. The only other option is you can try and delete everything and start from wherever you deleted forward.
Well, I have done it pretty much 100 at a time.
Yeah.
And out of that 100, I choose maybe 3 or 4 that I want to keep.
That
But
makes it
it's
rubber.
gotten so many goofy emails that I get, you know.
In the future, you might want to set up filter rules so that a lot of that stuff goes someplace else.
Yeah, it hasn't worked for me because emails that I want to get, and I get them from a lot of different sources, I miss them if they're automatically sent to garbage, and I don't want that either.
No, you don't automatically spam or trash them. You send anything that isn't super important, you send to some kind of temporary folder that you set up as an additional folder in your own folders.
That's a good idea. I'll try that.
I have like about 10 or 20 different kinds of folders where I direct different things that are from different kinds of senders.
Okay.
Is there a way to configure something like Thunderbird to download all those emails and erase them from the server?
Thunderbird by default these days is IMAP. Whatever you do locally in IMAP happens remotely. The problem is if you delete something locally, it's gone.
Well, it goes into the trash folder.
No, it's worse than that. If you delete it in Thunderbird locally, it's gone from the server and it's gone from Thunderbird. I mean, yes, it does have trash.
It does have a trash can, and when I download from the server, it goes into my inbox. And when I delete what's in the inbox, it moves into the trash can.
Right.
So it's still sitting in the trash can locally.
Yeah.
That's what I was getting at. If he wanted to, I'm just asking, is this an alternative? Is use something like Thunderbird as an email client and let it download all that stuff and delete it from the server? Is that a function you can do? Is my question.
Well, IMAP will be able to do more than 100 at a time.
Okay.
But Stan, that'll make it even more challenging to find those 7 or 8 or 10 or 20 that are important that you really want to keep.
Yeah.
The more you're mass deleting, the more the chance that 1 or 2 or 3 are important. I find myself through my attention span to be only able to scan through a page or 2 at a time if I'm trying to pick stuff out.
Yeah, that's what I do too. And it works, but it's very time consuming, you know.
Yeah.
And I figure someday they'll say, "Hey, your box is full."
You would have to have 2 gigabytes in there.
I don't know how many gigabytes I've got, but I've got about, what was it? Well, I don't remember, but it's up in the thousands, 12,000 or something like that, messages. A lot of them include pictures, that kind of thing.
Yeah, Gmail has a little meter, it looks like a progress bar, but it's actually showing how full your entire Google services are.
Yeah.
And it shows you how much you're using.
How about
I
19
did a little presentation on that. I don't know if it was this group or another group, but about cleaning out your Gmail.
How about 19,000 Gmails hanging up with the same problem, Stan?
You're getting the same problem I am. Maybe I should just send more to you.
No. I got enough. I got enough.
I've got about 75 subdirectories in Gmail. So when my email comes in, I look at it and I put what I want to save under whatever category it is. The rest of it trash. And I do that with all my emails. I've got half a dozen different email addresses.
Well,
Some of the bigger ones, when I'm sorting, I take the whole list and sort it by sender or something like that. So it brings groups together.
Yeah, you can do
And
that.
then sometimes if you got that many in there, sometimes as you're scanning through, then you may have 100 on a page and you can take the whole page out at once, as long as you can see that everything in there is stuff that you don't normally want to keep.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Gary.
It's easier to sort.
Yeah, do a sort first and then delete those that you know are from Pinterest or, some other service that you really don't care about.
yeah, no,
Right.
that's a good idea.
Yeah, that's why I suggested sorting and filtering on a routine basis. And setting up extra folders or labels as they are in Gmail.
Yeah,
So
Right.
how are you guys getting this many emails? Is it you
We're
went to these?
popular.
What?
We're popular.
Ah. Yeah, if you sign up for enough stuff or if you do enough social media, you'll get a lot of email.
Okay.
They reproduce like rabbits.
Yeah.
Oh, even rabbits can't reproduce that fast. It's like bacteria.
Okay. Who else has got a question? Next question, new direction? None?
I've been having trouble with my router dropping off the 5G. I don't know what's going on. I've unplugged it and plugged it back in, and sometimes it comes back, and other times it doesn't.
Is it your router or a Comcast or something like that?
No, I've got a Netgear combo router modem.
Have you checked for firmware updates?
Not in the last few weeks.
Well, okay. Or is your router automatically set up to do updates?
I'm not sure.
I don't think they're set up on.
Tim, you're muted.
Yeah.
I don't think they're set up for automatic updates in the routers. It's usually a manual update. You go check you have to log into the router.
Yeah.
You go into the security stuff and you check to see if there is an update available. If so, then you download it. And then eventually it tells you to reboot. And when it comes back up, you're in business. But how old is the router?
3 months, less than 6 months old.
Okay,
Oh,
then you might have an update that might correct a problem.
Where'd you buy it, Wayne?
I bought it through Costco.
Costco. Well, Costco gives you extended warranty. You could always send it back.
Well, I don't know that that's I think it's something to do with the settings.
It may, as a remote possibility, you could have a defective radio.
Call Costco's backup and see if they give you any hints.
Well, there you go. They got that concierge service.
Yeah, I'm just looking at my options, settings, more, new setup, support, about, account management, subscription, and reboot. Maybe I'll
Firmware should be in there.
It must be
It's
under.
buried, and they may on some routers have basic setup and advanced, and usually you have to go to the advanced.
On my Asus, the firmware information is actually posted at the very top. And as part of the menu bar, it'll tell you what firmware it's running, and you could tap on it and see if there's an update. But that's my Asus unit. And my Asus will automatically do firmware updates in the background. Well, it does a reboot overnight, but if it gets one, it'll do it.
I just found it. It's checking now. Right now, it says wait 2 minutes while your router checks for new firmware.
Yeah, just be
Yep.
forewarned, Wayne. If you go and do that update now, you'll be kicked out and you'll have to log back into the meeting.
There's no new firmware available at this time.
Okay,
Just got the message.
that's a good thing, I guess, and it's not a good thing. If you still have this problem, I would try the concierge service.
Well, one of the things when I was looking through my thing tonight, it's Nighthawk, and one of the things is that it will automatically set up either the 2.4 or the 5 gigahertz for whichever thing it thinks is the best for that particular device that's it's tied in.
Okay, so I think we've discussed 2.4 and 5 at home, and what, at least in my opinion or some people's else's opinions, why you should use one versus the other, and what are the conditions that 2.4 works better or 5 works better. So as a quick, 5 works best when you're running, if you're gaming, if you're doing video, is, like YouTube or streaming, you want those on 5. However, if your device is the farther away you go from where your router is, the more the signal on the 5 gigahertz is going to drop off.
Yep.
And the 5 gigahertz is more susceptible to interference from physical features in your house. The further away you get, the more obstruction there is between you and the router. The 5 gigahertz does not work well. Think of it as kind of along like line of sight, if you will. Can you see it? It's going to work great. If you can't see it, you're going to have some signal issues. And that's just like a generality of a statement. 2.4 will go a much longer distance in your house. So if you have a long house or a tall house, the top part of the house and your router is downstairs, the top part, you'd be better off to run at you use a 2.4 signal to get to it. Am I making any sense here?
Well, I know about that. I'm all familiar with that.
Okay.
I see now, all of a sudden, I've got 22 devices hooked up to it. And out of that, there's 1, 2, 3. There's 5 of them now. All of a sudden, they're on 5G.
Okay. Well, it should tell you which ones are on what.
Are they all computing devices or streaming devices?
The 5Gs are all smartphones and iPads.
Yeah.
Usually iPads are used streaming. You probably stream to your phones too.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the devices are only 2.4. In fact, my printer is only 2.4.
And you don't need to run it. You don't need to run a printer at anything more than a 2.4.
Yeah.
Are your devices running on IPv4 or IPv6?
I don't know.
If you don't know, chances are you're not using IPv6.
Right. Yeah, the majority of them still are in most areas on the IPv4. Some do get an option of the IPv6, but that was created so that you could create more IP addresses than V4 will support.
I had 2 or 3 printers that grabbed 6 for some reason, all around when I hooked them up.
Newer devices might do that. And there's nothing wrong with that. It actually should improve their ability to maintain a connection.
Yeah, it worked fine.
And also, usually IPv6 and 5 gigahertz usually go together, but they don't have to.
Okay, any other questions or comments on this? Nobody knows the reason for your problem, Wayne.
I don't know. I think it's disappeared.
I think if it keeps going on, you should contact Costco. Because if you wait too long, then your warranty runs out.
Yeah.
You should check what time of day it happens, and check and see whether you're running some kind of other device or whether your heat and cooling are running, because interference is definitely a possibility.
You could have
especially at 2.4 gigahertz.
Right.
Microwave ovens can do it.
When I reboot my printer today, printed out the settings. I've got 14 different networks that it found in my neighborhood.
In the neighborhood, yeah. There's also same channel interference, and that's a big problem. Which is why for internet connections, you probably want to switch up to 5 gigahertz, because you just simply have a lot more channels you can choose from. Or your router can choose for you if it's capable of auto select.
Yeah, on a smartphone, you get Wi-Fi analyzer, and it'll tell you what's on what channels, so that if you and neighbors are clobbering each other, you can change your channel in the 5 gigahertz range to where nobody is right now, and save yourself a headache. It applies the same way to 2.4 gigahertz.
Except that in 2.4, you're not likely to find an empty channel.
No, you'll have overlap, but if you talk to the ISPs, they want you to set up on channel 1, channel 6, or channel 11.
Yeah.
I have none of mine set up on that. I have it like channel 3 or 9 in most instances.
Good answer.
Yeah.
Well, I see my two channels that I've got are set up on channel 5.
There should be a second channel too.
Yeah, I'm guessing that it's being auto-selected if those are the channels.
Yeah, most routers do auto-select, and that way they can bounce the signal. But a lot of times, especially on 2.4, but it can apply to 5, it's better to select your own channel after looking at a Wi-Fi analyzer app output on a smartphone for your area. Then you can set it up for channels that aren't occupied and get a clear signal pretty much all the time. You don't need to do the bouncing around.
Are you using a VPN?
Yep.
Did you try changing your source on that to see if it made any difference? You can choose other different ones.
That's a good point too, because VPN, I've been using that, especially on one machine, very heavily. And it seems like in the last 4 months or so, latency times for the United States, at least half the day, is very, very poor when it used to be excellent most of the time. And I've actually had connections now in Australia and a bunch of other foreign countries because the connection latency was lower than anything in the United States.
I get pop-up notices occasionally that it's really slow. Sometimes it makes a difference to what I'm doing, sometimes it doesn't, so.
Yeah, most of the VPNs, they'll give you an option of
Is there such
location.
an animal as a VPN that's applicable to smartphones?
Yes.
Yes,
Tell me about it.
I've seen it offered, but I haven't used it at all.
Well, the reason why I asked the question, they're solicitors, the police department primarily, the police agencies, they're soliciting, and when their ID flashed on a telephone, they're in a different location every single time. But I know who they are because they ask for my wife every single time.
That's solicitors, that's not actual police people.
No, they're solicitors.
Yeah.
Well,
But I get a different area code every time they call. They're in a different area code suggesting a different location in the country.
right. But
Or they're spoofing.
Obviously spoofing, but I'm trying to understand. It seems like they've got some kind of a VPN device, which makes the receiver thinks that there's someplace that they're not.
well, the other
It's different from VPN. That's spoofing is a whole different matter. That's hacking.
Yeah, the other side of the coin on that issue is that only some police departments use that location information to find you, especially if you're not able to talk to them when you are on a 911 call. But a lot of places, especially the smaller towns and cities, don't have that resource.
Yeah, also if your phone's on the internet line, they sometimes can't track you on 911 either.
Right.
That's why if there isn't a name when the phone rings and all there is a number, I ignore it. If they really want something badly enough, they'll leave a message.
It's my philosophy. We let calls go for minutes until somebody answers. And then we'll pick up, you know.
Mhm.
How many here in this group still have a landline? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Wow. Half the group have landlines.
Well, mine's a VOPI through my internet service, but it's still classified a landline.
It still is. Even though it's an IP phone, it comes in, it's still a landline. And you're still paying for it no matter what, even if it's included with your bill or whatever. Okay.
Yeah, I do the VoIP from Comcast.
Okay.
That's not really a landline,
Well, that's what
and it's not treated as a landline. It's not a common carrier.
voice over IP is kind of like a landline because it goes to a physical phone in your house, right?
Yes, but it uses the cable,
It uses the cable. It's just
and as such, it does not have power when the power goes off. It can cut out when the services get overloaded. There's a whole bunch of other things that distinguish it from a landline. It's
Nope.
not reliable 911 service.
No.
All kinds of things like that. But that having been said, I don't have a proper landline, so it's the best I've got.
okay.
Some of the VoIP stuff you can also hook your cell phone right into it too. So if you're in the house, you're somewhere at home, your cell phone will ring and go through that as well.
Yeah, if I would upgrade my services, I could do that. But I would have to have their cell plane,
Their cell phone.
Xfinity X5.
Actually, I think it's the phone equipment is what gives me that option.
Yeah, it may differ depending on who your ISP is and who your phone carrier is and all sorts of things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, after all, who is it? Verizon or T-Mobile? They're offering these 5G hotspots for your home to use as a substitute for internet service.
T-Mobile.
T-Mobile phone. Well, Verizon's basically doing the same thing.
Just in different cities.
Yeah, right now they're kind of picky. It isn't widespread, but they keep banging on you all the time to check and see if you're eligible.
Yeah, here in the Boston area, we have another company called Starry, which does entire buildings, multifamily buildings, and it has a single rooftop transmitter and receiver. And other than that, it's terrestrial, not satellite, but it's 5G. And
So
people who have
they physically come and put an antenna on your roof?
they put an antenna on the building roof. The building owner has to agree to it.
Oh, I see.
And it's a contract that makes it available to the entire building. I believe it's either Cambridge or Brighton has it currently around Boston. These are areas with a lot of people who can really afford it.
Preferable pricing.
Actually, the pricing isn't too horrible. It's better than Starlink.
Yeah.
Then again, it's not available in Ukraine.
Yeah.
Has anyone looked into getting the Starlink service? Okay, let's move on to a different topic.
If you're in Ukraine, I think you get it free.
Yes,
Yeah,
it is. And they just had to debug it because the Russians were trying to jam it.
Not surprised.
But interestingly enough, they have AI that can unjam it.
Okay, any last questions for the group? Nope. Okay, we'll conclude our open forum and we'll go into our presentation by Tom O'Connor. Tom, you got it. You can start sharing this. You could just share your screen, and if you have something to show us, or you can give a presentation. Why don't you have the floor, Tom?
Okay, I don't have anything to show you, but a handful of things to talk about. What can I say? As far as the upgrades on my laptop, I did install an SSD. Nothing real special to talk about. The SSD was put in, but before I did that, I did an external drive to make a copy of it. And that way I was safely getting a copy. So I put the SSD in and copied it right back to it. Let's see, I also put in, the 5 gigabyte connection through T-Mobile on my phone. And we're having trouble with the tower, and that's why I may be breaking up while I'm talking to you guys. Sorry if it's happening. It's a tower problem. The other thing I've done to my laptop is gone from memory of 6 gigabyte to 16, a little too much, but that's what I've done. Now, as far as experiences with my laptop, another thing I've done wrong probably is, well, not wrong, but another thing I've done is the software updates and additions. And I can have to say that Tim has helped me with this, and I'll be doing a lot of learning on the software he's put in. The driver boosters, that wasn't hard to understand. It gives me all the current boosters that are out there that I needed. And basically, I didn't understand how to do it safely until he put in the product called Driver Booster. Something else that I was using was something called a utility called Glary. And I guess that had one way of looking at how to take care of your system, utility to see what was missing and how to update it and how to do a lot of cleaning up and adjusting of software and clearing out the system. But I needed to have things like CCleaner, another utility that did it in a different approach, but the same types of things and a little bit more. Added also another utility called Advanced System Cleaner. And it was, again, a utility looking from a different site, but it did similar functions. And a third called Disk Management, another utility, and all of them looking at different angles, but doing the same type of functions. A few had additional stuff on it, but Glary was what I had used, but these additional three were things that, well, two of which I had no idea that Advanced System Care didn't know about it. Disk Management didn't know about it. CCleaner I did know about, but I guess I didn't trust, so I didn't use it. Okay, so now I'll be using all four of them because I have a better understanding, but I will be doing a lot of research and learning on all three of those. Okay, I liked, as far as working on the internet, I've been using Chrome, so I liked it. I knew of Firefox, but I liked Chrome the best, so I never used Firefox. Microsoft Edge jumped in at one time, but I ignored it. And it was still sitting on my system, but I had Chrome, so I was happy. Well, Tim has enjoyed having it out there, so I'll be using all three of them, Chrome, Firefox, and Microsoft Edge, because they have different abilities, and I'll be learning quite a bit from all three. But again, my education will be expanded on using all three instead of just Chrome. There will be a couple more pieces of software, something called Malwarebyte, which I had never used. It's a freebie, and the types of things I know about that, it worked on cyber threats for, well, crushers of cyber threats. It also shields vulnerabilities for the system. And basically that's all new protective devices and data and privacy protections. So it's something I didn't know about, but it's a very powerful piece of software. Again, I don't know much about it, but I'll be learning because it is a very powerful piece, and I'm happy that he pointed it out to me and put it into my system. Another piece that he put there that I'll really enjoy, I haven't expanded it yet, but it's called LastPass. And that will really shorten a piece of paper I've got, 8.5 by 11, and it's, what can I say? The print is, the font I use is size 7. So you can understand 8.5 by 11, size 7. I've got a lot of lines, and it's all passwords. So all of it's going to be automated. So I won't need that kind of thing anymore. And I did have it on my computer, but it was on a flash drive, so it wasn't where anybody could get at it. So easily readable, but not available to people able to look on my system. Okay, another set of softwares. Things like Quick Assist, Zoom, and well, we're using it right now, and something called Meet Now. And all of these are things for the ability for online interactive systems. So I did find that that likes to eat up a lot of my interactive time on my system, on my gigabytes of internet. So when I originally was using, what can I say, the amount of space I had or was paying for on the phone, I was probably using somewhere around 20 gigabytes. So I had purchased a package with 40, double the amount that I had and was using. Well, I very quickly was getting past 40 gigabytes because Tim was helping me so much. Well, I pushed it up to 50, and I was even getting up to and just past that. But we were doing a lot of work, and it was well worth it because Tim was doing a great job with helping me out. But basically, that's interacting online, just like we're talking back and forth right now. And one thing that I've found that shows me how well, what can I say, that the G5 is working or not working is a speed test through Ookla. It tells me how much of the internet is being used. It does a good job of showing me how fast it's working on my system, even though that the phone can tell me that, for instance, right now I've got and if it were bars, I'd have 4 out of 5 power right now, which is quite good. But this speed test Ookla would show me that I was probably in the range of, about 80 in the download, and the upload would be somewhere in the 9 to 12 area. It's a little slow right now, but early in the morning, it's in the 200 range download. So, yeah, what can I say? It's much better when that tower is working properly. They're having quite a bit of problem with it right now. And I've been in touch with the company T-Mobile and complaining quite a bit because I did purchase the higher grade phone to get G5, and they told me I'd have a better quality, a better speed. And when I first got it, it did show in the 300 range, but something went wrong in their tower. They told me they fixed it, and sure, I could get the good speed right away, but it must have gotten struck by lightning, or somebody tripped over something in the tower, disconnected a wire, or who knows, maybe it got rained on and shorted out. I don't know. But yeah, what can I say? I'm still a little bit above the 2.4 speed but that the old phone had, but not much. So I've been doing quite a bit of complaining with them, and they've got a work order out, so let's see what happens. And that pretty much covers a lot of what's going on with me right now. So I have a lot of learning to do, and a lot of work to do, especially with LastPass. But that's a real quality piece of software where I won't have to be looking at a piece of paper trying to figure out what's the password for this, that, and the other, because it's going to be automated for me. I'd suggest that for anybody that doesn't have it right now. Do we have some questions that I can answer a little better than just going through a list of software?
How did you do that SSD upgrade?
The SSD upgrade.
Yeah,
Oh.
how'd you do it? What'd you do?
Well-
What drive did you buy? Where'd you get it?
Okay.
How much?
Okay, well, where'd I get it? I got it at it's Micro Center, I think it's called. And the exact price I don't exactly remember. I think it was in the $120 range or less, maybe $50. I honestly don't remember exactly what I paid. I wasn't worried about the price. No, I'm not rich, but I wanted to get the higher speed in my system. And as far as getting it into the system, it didn't take too much. As far as the mechanics of putting it in, the actual abilities, I can handle that fairly easily. I know how to do things with my hands. As far as getting the software moved back and forth, the data that wasn't hard to do. Just like putting in the memory cards didn't take much.
Well, how did you move the software from your old PC, from your old hard drive to the new hard drive?
Okay, well, I had an external 300 gigabyte drive that I just plugged into USB port, and I did a copy of the internal 500 gigabyte out to the external drive. So it didn't take much. Go ahead.
You just literally dragged and dropped it?
Yeah.
And then, okay, so now you got the copy on the external. You've put in the SSD. Then what? You booted off the external, or did you boot? If you booted off the SSD, it's got nothing on it.
Yeah, the SSD had nothing on it. We had to boot off the external. If I remember correctly, we did make a bootable flash drive, but it was just the bootable portion. It wasn't any particular data, but the external drive itself had the bootable information on it also. Everything was moved out. So it was ready to be used as a C drive would have been.
Tim wants to add something.
Go ahead.
All right, a couple things. Number one, Tom has not only the laptop he's discussed there, he has a desktop, which we also have done the same work on. But also both computers, he only had one account. One account in Windows is the administrator account he was doing everything on. He now has a standard account to do his daily activities on each of the two computers, which is a very important point from a security standpoint. Now, as far as your questions, first off, the laptop's harder to do than the desktop. It can only handle one drive. So he had either a 560 or 600 gigabyte spinning hard drive. And I had to use partitioning tools to shrink the image properly so it would fit on the new SSD. And the SSD shouldn't have cost over 30 bucks. But anyway, once he got the shrunken image, we backed that up a second time. We used Macro and Reflect. These are straight two backups. The original backup of the content of the drive the way it was, then a shrunken version backup. We created the flash drive recovery media. We shut down the computer, swapped out the hard drive with a SSD, which was blank. We stuck in the flash drive first, and as it was booting up, we plugged in the external hard drive, and when it was all up, we did a restore of the shrunken backup only to the SSD. When the backup image was done, we booted up the system. I went in with a partition tool again and expanded primarily the C partition so that you got the majority of the drive in use. And that also required that to execute the expansion, you have to reboot the computer. It does it in DOS mode automatically, and then it boots back up into Windows. And he noticed a tremendous change there. On the desktop, it's easier. He had 3 physical hard drives internally. The one that had Windows that he was booting the system up on was 2 terabyte, of which an eyedropper full was actually in use. And we had to shrink that way down, and he got a different make of SSD from Amazon for that one. I think it was an A data.
Yep.
And then we backed up the shrunken image. We installed the SSD using the optical drive, which doesn't work, it's cables, by restoring from the live running system to the SSD of that backup. It's now on that drive. Then we shut things down. We had to switch around cables internally on the motherboard, and now the solid state drive is the primary drive. We took most of the space not used on the 2 terabyte, turned it into a data partition, and the other 2 drives just exist. His optical drive will not be hooked up because it doesn't work anyhow, and he doesn't have a real need for it. So all this worked with just the 4 SATA ports on the motherboard, and he's a lot happier so far. He did have to upgrade his phone because it only had 2.4 gigahertz capability, 72 megabytes total, and if you're running both computers at the same time, you're dividing that low speed between 2 computers with video conferencing type tools. That kind of is an overload. So he traded that in for a 5G phone, and the 5G phone started off halfway decent, but especially yesterday, that thing kept dropping out like crazy. So we had to try and finish today, after they supposedly were going to try and fix the tower, but apparently it's not totally fixed, but we only had one glitch today. That's the main thing.
Yes.
So all that work you did, and I understand you also upgraded the RAM too in your laptop. Would you say all this effort was worth it?
Yes, I would. The amount of time that it took to boot up either or both systems was cut at least down to only a third of the time.
So your boot time used to be about how long, would you say?
Well, on the laptop, it was very close to 4 minutes, like 2 minutes, like 4 minutes, 3 minutes. It was like 2 minutes and 48 seconds. And now it's close to 1 minute.
That's a pretty good increase in speed. And your desktop, probably even more.
Yeah, I didn't watch the actual time for that one. I was surprised at the desktop, or the laptop, I mean.
Okay. So which is your primary device?
The primary one is the desktop.
Is the desktop. And you had mentioned that you're starting to use LastPass. I'm assuming you're using the free version or the paid
Yes,
version?
free version.
Isn't the free? Oh, the free version is one platform or one device?
It's basically, think of it as a platform. It works on desktops, whether old style tower or minis, laptops. I'm not sure how they classify a tablet. And smartphones is the alternate platform. If you have both smartphone and regular computers, you have to pay a fee. If you only have one or the other, you can use it for free.
Anyone else got questions for Tom? Now I understand why you chewed through all that data. You had a lot going on. There's one other thing, Tom.
Yeah.
I believe I gave you an idea on how to get internet for a lower price. And you were going to talk about that. The government
Internet.
program? Are you drawing a blank?
I'm drawing a blank there.
The government program that you got into for internet.
They supplement $30 or something like that, isn't it?
Right. Okay. Tom, I know I gave you information on this. Maybe you're pulling a blank today on this because I remember you were saying you were going to talk about it.
I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. That's fine.
Well, would that government program apply to a T-Mobile hotspot smartphone?
I thought Tom, when I mentioned it to him, he inquired about it and he was able to get something, some sort of either subsidies or something. What this is there is a government program to provide internet to low-income people or people in rural areas, and it's subsidies that are going through most of the internet service providers. That is like Comcast, T-Mobile. I'm assuming WoW. We've got. There's another company out here by me that's offering internet, and it's $30, and they're giving you, I think, what is it, 100 megabit service that they'll give you at $30.
Okay. I think I know what you're talking about now. Sorry, the brain is slow here. Yes, you did say something about it, and I did check on it. I didn't make it.
You didn't
And
make
the problem, no, I'm a rich man, according to them. The amount of money that I get was too much. And the whole amount of money is not the whole dollar amount, but what I get in Social Security is a little bit extra because I get it for disability. And that puts me a little bit higher than what they allow for this.
Okay.
I get paid a little extra.
But what did you find out about that service besides the money amount? Anything more?
No, they just shut up at that point. They
Okay.
wanted to find out, well, how much do you make? And I said, well, I get my Social Security money. And they said, well, how much do you get in a year? So I
Well,
got to my, go ahead.
what if you didn't tell them the truth and you told them a lower amount? How would they know?
Well, they could look at your tax forms and find out.
Who? You mean the internet? You mean like T-Mobile or Comcast? You have to give them your 1040?
No, you had to talk to the government about it.
Oh, it's the government. Okay. All right.
Yeah, it was the government you had to talk to get the information to verify it. And when I talked to them, the first thing they asked about was,
Okay.
well, how much money do you make? And I said, well, I'm on Social Security. And they said, yes, but what did you get last year?
Okay.
And I said, well, I can look at my tax form. Give me a minute. And so I pulled it out of the drawer and got it out and said, well, it was, X amount, I think like 29,000 something. And they said, well, it got over 20.
These numbers.
Well, I don't know the exact number exactly. And they said, well, you can't be over 26,000 or something. And so bingo, it was over.
Ah.
So that's when the conversation stopped, just like that.
Okay. All right. And I think if I remember, yeah, this is a subsidy program that's out there.
Yeah.
And it's $30 for 100 megabit service.
Yes. No, I did that research. I checked it out completely. I sorry I didn't remember what you're talking about, but that was the first thing I checked. And that's why, since I wasn't making it, I let it go. Thank you for reminding me, but I did look into it.
Anyone else got questions for Tom?
Are you syncing between your laptop and your desktop? Or is anybody in the group doing that kind of thing?
You're asking if I'm syncing between them?
Yeah. Or whatever you'd put on one feeds it over to the other one whenever it's online. There's
What?
certain amount of your information can be synced between two machines that way, and some people use it, and I don't know of very many people that do, unless they're maybe business people, but
Generally speaking, the way his systems were, no way was he doing it. And I didn't even think about it because I don't bother to do that myself, but
No.
it could be set up. I got a little bit yet to finish with Tom on his setup stuff, but we're close to being completely done.
Yeah, I don't synchronize too much in the way of the two machines, but I do have a handful of things that are on both machines, but I don't have them.
Right. They don't feed back and forth, so that they keep up to date. If you do one, it updates the other one.
No, I don't.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what I was saying. Okay. Anybody else got questions for Tom? Sorry.
There was definitely an improvement in, you said, in the boot up time for both machines that you put the SSDs in, right?
Oh, definitely.
But that's not your goal. That's not the main goal, to speed up the boot up time. It's basically to speed up the whole machine.
Yeah, right.
And Tom, do you feel that you have almost like a new machine there?
In both cases, yes.
Okay. And so it's almost like you breathe new life in them and they're significantly faster?
Yes.
That's it right there. I upgraded every one of my machines that had spinners as their boot drives. I upgraded all those to SSDs. It's just, it's absolutely big night and day between how fast they perform. And and the throughput is much quicker. If you're doing anything, actually almost everything we do is hard drive intensive these days. It's well worth the money to spend, and since SSDs are relatively cheap, and if you can get one, do it. Is anyone here running a spinner on as their main drive anymore? James is. Looks like Wayne still's got one. James,
Yeah.
tell me what are you doing on a spinner? You got to unmute yourself, James.
Most of what I do is just play games. I don't do any
Play
business.
games. And have you considered upgrading your box, your PC, your laptop?
I couldn't see any reason to. I don't do anything.
You know, you turn it on. Okay, you play games. I guess that's it. But I mean, games in themselves require speed.
Now listen,
Unless you're just doing online games.
I just listen to books. You know, that's about it.
Okay.
I
Wayne?
I upgraded my one of my old laptops to an SSD and put Linux on it.
And how'd that work for you?
It works pretty good. It took so long to boot up, you know, with the it was an old must have been 10 years old.
Oh, I'll bet you it took like 4 minutes for it to boot up.
Oh yeah, took forever.
And now it boots up. Well, you got Linux on there, so that's
Yeah.
quick.
Almost instantly.
Almost instantly. Wow. And is this the machine you're using right now?
No, I'm using the one with the spinner.
Do anyone use a Linux machine and doing their Zoom meetings on that Linux machine?
I have done so.
Okay. And
there's another remote meeting service or software called Jitsi Meet, which I use for my main Linux user group out here. They don't like Zoom for privacy reasons and security. But anyway, yes, I have used Zoom. In fact, I use Linux Mint and Zoom for Teams meetings.
and it works well?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Zoom is designed to be perfectly cross-platform, although there are limitations on iPads.
Okay.
Jitsi Meet is just simply an open source alternative which uses a little different way of doing things, and it's not as stable.
All right, I think we covered all these topics here. Has anyone else got any last minute questions for Tom or Tim or any of us?
In answer to your question, I have a spinner in my NUC with a data drive. And that's all I do with it, is collect data.
Oh, for data. And
Yeah.
spinners I'm talking boot drives mainly.
Have a boot drive, yeah.
Yeah, a boot drive, I would use an SSD, but for a data drive, you need volume and not necessarily speed, unless you're doing a lot of video editing or something like that. That will definitely come into play there. And I've used machines with spinners and doing video editing and SSDs, and I'd rather do it on an SSD for video editing.
Of course.
Photo editing, absolutely, the SSD is a must for photo editing.
Did you have any machines, maybe 4 or 5 years old, that had hybrid drives in them, where the operating system was on a what they considered at that time an SSD section of it?
Previously, in my evolution of computers and hard drives, I had gone from in laptops. It was laptop drives were mainly the hybrid drives were in those. I had gone from an old spinner to a hybrid drive Did I feel there was an improvement? Yes, but not necessarily significant. But it was there. There was something there. I never could measure it, but I did use it in a work environment for data processing, and I felt that it must have helped. I don't know. Back then, I probably could have given you some data that supported it, but I don't have that anymore. And I don't use any of those hybrid drives on any of my systems anymore because I've moved on from that.
Has anybody had any experience with the Optane drives that use non-volatile memory?
No.
I haven't either.
Right, you look it up.
The thing was Tom's Hardware had some stuff a year or so ago about the Optanes, and in some cases, they really didn't even recommend them because they said they were more show than go.
Is that like not the NV RAMs? Is that something different?
It's kind of similar to a hybrid arrangement, except there's something inside your computer that is a separate section of memory that's dedicated to basically caching.
Yeah, that's I think that was the big thing. It gave you a lot of fast cache to use if you were working with the type of software and machines and stuff that required more cache to improve performance.
The key there is having the right software that takes advantage of it.
I think maybe they were saying that people who did gaming, I did like having that type of caching.
Caching on the old hybrid drives, there was also separate devices like this that are like a 2.5-inch drive. They work with a standard drive and do the same performance feature as a hybrid. The hybrid is strictly a solid state drive you don't have direct access to, like a regular SSD or an NVMe, and it just does caching of the most frequently used software you run. The more repetitive you are on the pieces of software that you run, the better the performance would be on reading it into memory to load and execute. It did nothing for the write operation. And if you tried loading in something that you only occasionally use, it wouldn't find it in the cache. It would go directly to the hard drive and load it up from there, so you gain no benefit.
Now, like I said, I used to use them in a work environment when I did my mailing list processing, which is just data. And it was a lot of thrashing back and forth, but it would had to hunt and go pull up large amount of files or records and process them. And I did find that there was an advantage to having a hybrid drive. Eventually, I moved those particular machines to SSDs when they became available. And there I found a significantly uptick in the speed of the whole system. And back in those days, I could give you measurable data to be able to qualify that information, but I don't have that anymore. It's all gone. It's back in the old days behind me. Okay, anybody else got any last comments? No.
Is there any way that added memory cards could be somehow directed to be used for cache?
In a figurative manner, yes. Basically, it's using old style technology called a RAM drive. You partition a portion of your real memory into a RAM drive. The concept generally was to initialize at boot a RAM drive. Then you would copy the most frequently used pieces of software you would use into the RAM drive. And when you needed to run those pieces of software, it went to the RAM drive to get the software and load it into regular use memory versus going to a solid state drive, NVMe, or a spinning hard drive. But that's as close as you get that I know of.
And I used to do that back in the day when I was tinkering around with those large data files and list processing. I used to take a portion of my RAM, segregate it as a RAM disk, copy the particular data that I knew that was static, but always need to be accessible. That was consider it like a zip code lookup table. The zip codes stay the same across the country, but I had to reference them all the time, constantly, back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And so my system would go look there and get what it needed. If it didn't, then it would go to the hard drive. That was way back. This was, boy, it was like 10 years ago or something like that. Back in the Windows 7 days is when I used to do that. I will say, Tom, the other thing that could be done, you don't need to do this, but could be done today with Windows 10, it does still support using a USB stick as like a caching device. It's called, what do they call it? RAM Boost?
Ready
Uh,
boost.
Ready
Boost. Ready Boost. And those of you that are using a spinner could consider, if you have a USB 3.0, is what I would recommend. Now, somebody else may say something different, and a relatively fast USB stick that's USB 3.0, you could plug that into the computer and use that as a ready boost, and you configure it through Windows. And what it'll do is it'll become like a caching device for you. Windows still supports this.
Yes, it does. But I think the limitation on that, unless they change it after I stopped using it, was 2 gigabytes. And it would be better if it was 4 or more, because even this thing here is 32 gigabytes, and a lot of the hybrids had at least 24 gigabytes of cache memory. So 2 gigs back in those days was nothing in relative terms. So it was very limited on what it could keep in the cache to boost your speed in response time over going out to the hard disk and loading the program in from there or your data. So a lot has to do with like the Ready Boost. You can still use that even in 10 today. You also have the RAM disk. If you've got, I say, more than 8 gigs of memory and you're not using all of that memory heavily, you can set up what's called a batch file, which most people don't even know what it is, let alone remember it, to every time you boot up, load up the RAM disk software into upper memory. You would add statements to add that drive to the drive path, something we haven't had to do since the 1990s, I don't think. And you would then copy in from main storage the programs or data files you use the most, depending on how much you set aside. So in Tom's case on the laptop, he's got 16 gigs. Well, that's probably double what he actually needs. So in a sense, he could set up an 8 gigabyte RAM drive, use that 8 gigs as though it's a solid state drive, And the thing is, real RAM memory is faster than current SSDs and many of the NVMEs, unless you've got a pretty new board that has PCIe 4 support or the brand new PCIe 5 support. That's a protocol in both cases. They can drive theoretically NVMe SSDs to lofty speeds to the point where you have to have heat sinks and you might even have to have water cooling on the devices because they'll get hotter than all heck. Just like they're already doing on a lot of the high-end graphic cards and have been doing for years on CPUs, especially when they overclock the CPU to get more throughput.
But you sure got to have a good reason to go through all that exercise and work.
Well, and you better have deep pockets too, because it
Yeah.
costs a lot of money.
Yeah, and it's not something I see this this collection of faces here just jumping in to do. Although Tom, I know that he's rolled up his sleeves and he's willing to jump in there and get that flying on his machine. Tom, why were you asking about a RAM drive? Now that you got a
Well-
taste of speed, you want more speed?
Well, I've been told, Tim suggested that, like he just said now, that yes, I had 6 and I bought more. Well, I understood how a cache drive works, and I do know the antiques, being that I was the IT professional. The way they used to work is back in the mainframe era, that the machine itself decided what it needed for cache from the memory. Well, PCs don't do that, I found out after I bought this extra cache, or extra memory, I should say. So if there's a way to make cache out of it in some way or another, then let's use the memory. If I'm not ever going to use it, why let it sit there and get cold or dusty or whatever, you know? So if I can use some of it, let's make it cache. And
So how much
somehow
RAM do you have in your machine?
I'm sorry, what's that?
How much RAM do you have in your machine?
16 gigabyte.
16. And you bought more?
No, that's what I have in it. I had 6.
Okay. And you moved it to 16.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Okay, in terms of what happens when you have extra RAM in a computer that isn't used for basic operating system and program needs, if you have something going on that does need more memory or could benefit from it, for example, a huge file transfer, I have system monitoring tools, and you can notice that the part of the memory that is used for cache can ramp up, and it can even expand to the point where you're basically using almost all of the available memory in doing things like a large transfer, video or audio transcoding, things that are really resource intensive. And this is where having extra memory actually in the machine, and you don't have to do anything special in a modern operating system. It just does this automatically. It will take advantage of it. I find Linux does it, some Linux anyway, will do it more than Windows. But Windows also does it. And it speeds the transfers tremendously. I mean,
Also,
like if I'm transferring a whole disk image.
Well,
that's
I don't
because,
do transfers, but I do use, I do watch movies, but I just plug in an external SSD drive and just watch off of that.
Yeah.
well, see, what Bob's referring to, especially in file transfers, because the extra memory is there, it's using it as a data buffer bigger
Right,
than
yeah.
it would otherwise use. That helps speed up the whole process. But it also depends on the device you're reading from and going to. And if it's the internet, unless you've got extreme speed it will help very, very little. Whereas if you're going from an SSD to an SSD, whether it's NVMe or not, it will benefit from a speed boost.
Having more RAM also allows you to have more windows open,
And more browser tabs in Chrome.
more browser tabs. That's part of Windows, yeah, and that's what I meant. You could have more applications open and running in the background or just sitting idle without you having any slowdown in your system by opening those.
I've got a Chromebook. It's got an i5 processor. It's, I think, 5th gen. It's got 8 gigs of memory. That's the way it came. I
6.
have, it only comes with Chrome browser. I have over 50, almost 60 windows open with umpteen tabs per window. Right now, the number exceeds 1,700 tabs, and I'm still going. Why? Because I put almost all of them to sleep until I need them for their content.
There you go.
Yeah, and Windows 10 has a way of doing that for other applications as well. Put the background processes into a sleep mode, but then resume so that they very quickly fire up.
Actually, on Windows, I've never seen a real need and justification for background apps running. So generally, I turn in the privacy section of settings, I turn background off on all my machines, and I don't notice any degradation.
I do know that if LibreOffice has to, or Microsoft Office has to be fired up, when it first fires up, it can be very slow to get up and running.
Is it just the Microsoft Office or LibreOffice?
Both. LibreOffice has some special problems occasionally when they get an update that doesn't quite play well with Windows, but that can really slow down the startup.
I haven't noticed it with my SSDs on LibreOffice. I don't use Microsoft Office, so I can't address that issue.
Yeah, in LibreOffice I have some optional components enabled, and they use some kind of scripting languages. And that can be kind of slow during startup.
Okay, this sounds like a great hardware discussion here.
Yeah, this is all hardware.
It's all hardware. Anyone else want to comment on this? No? Good job, Tom. Thank you for doing the presentation. And the good thing is it's all your learning experiences, and it paid off.
Thanks for your help, Tim. And you pointed out where I left off a few things there, a few major pieces.
Okay, our meeting next month is supposed to be a presentation by Carl Whalen, who is not here tonight, so I cannot confirm nor deny whether or not he will be here for that meeting. It's for next June. Hopefully he will be here. Hopefully he'll do his presentation. I got my fingers crossed. If not, it'll be a swift meeting. And then we were able to get this one to work tonight too. Is there any other last things we need to discuss? If not, I will call the meeting adjourned and say good night to everybody.
Oh, good coverage, good meeting.
Okay, good meeting. Good night, everybody.